Ladies and gentlemen, we hope you're enjoying your Korean food lunch today. I want to welcome you to our joint program with the Embassy of the Republic of Korea and the Korea Economic Institute. My name is Abraham Kim. I'm the interim president here at KEI, and I welcome you to this afternoon's program. Today, we'll be examining the opportunities to promote green and sustainable growth in the developing world. Among the many sectors we'll be looking at today, we'll be exploring areas related to energy, infrastructure, technology, and natural resources. Certainly, green growth has been a top priority and a part of the national strategy for the current President Lee Myung-bak administration, but has received greater attention more recently with the Republic of Korea being awarded as the location for the new Green Climate Fund Secretariat that will be managing billions of dollars of assistance to help developing nations adapt to climate change and move toward low-carbon economic growth. In light of this, another issue that we will be discussing today is Korea's own experience with promoting sustainable growth, green business, and energy policies. We have a very distinguished panel of experts today from Korea and from the Inter-American Development Bank and the World Bank. But before I introduce our speakers today, I'd like to first introduce and invite Minister Kim Gi-won to the podium to give our opening remarks. Minister Kim is the Minister for Economic Affairs at the Korean Embassy. He has served this role since August 25th, 2011. Previously, he served as the Director General for Multilateral Trade at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade, dealing with issues related to WTO, APEC, OECD, and G20. He was a senior official and a chief negotiator for various WTO Doha Development Agenda negotiations. And also, Minister Kim was also involved in FTA matters as the Deputy Director General of FTA Policy Bureau and was a chief negotiator in the Korea-Japan FTA consultation. Please help me welcome Minister Kim to the podium for his comments.
Thank you, Abram, for your kind introduction and beautiful words about my career. And now this is my pleasure to participate in this important seminar. This is a very important seminar since this seminar is very timely because Korea decided to host Secretariat of GCF, Green Climate Fund, as well as strong activities expected from GCCI. So first of all, I thank Abraham Kim, the interim president of KEI, for hosting this seminar. And also I'd like to extend my sincere appreciation to all distinguished participants from World Bank as well as IDB, and those high-ranking officials from MOFED and KEI. The purpose of this seminar is to discuss how to work together to develop green businesses in developing countries. Many developing countries view green businesses as an important opportunity and would like to seek build industries, their green industries, through technical and business cooperation with developed countries. Also, this initiative would give important business opportunities to developed countries as well. So this is a win-win situation. As you know, Korea is advancing green initiatives as a major policy goal of present incumbent government, and also the next government, whoever wins tomorrow, will succeed this important initiative in Korea, and they will try to make this initiative beneficial not only to Korea but also regional and international area. International organizations such as World Bank and IDB has been very active on developing nations' green businesses. South Korea also have strongly been supportive of these green initiatives. I hope today's seminar would provide an opportunity for us to better understand green business cooperation in developing countries and also possible cooperation between developed and developing countries. And I wish for a productive and insightful discussion today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister Kim, for your remarks. I'd like to introduce our first two speakers for this afternoon. How today's seminar will progress in terms of its format is we will, since there are 4 presentations today, we will first start with 2 presentations. First by Dr. Leandro Alves, followed by Dr. Ung-tae Chung. And then we will take a brief few minutes break right in the middle after those 2 presentations so we can clear your lunch boxes in front of you, and so you can grab a cup of coffee for about a few minutes, and then we'll transition to our second set of speakers, started by Dr. Dijon Ostojic, and then finally by Deputy Director General Sang Pyo-seo. And then after the final presentation, we will move to our Q&A session, where this will be an opportunity for all of you to engage our speakers and ask questions about their presentation and, of course, about our topic for today. So I will begin by introducing our first speaker. Dr. Leandro Alves is the head of the Energy Division of the Infrastructure and Environment Department of the Inter-American Development Bank. He's responsible for energy, oil and gas, extractive industries, and biofuels for the Latin America and the Caribbean region. Prior to joining IDB, his current role, he was a senior investment officer for the Structured and Corporate Finance Department at the IDB as well, where he was responsible for over $1 billion in structured finance transaction in the energy sector. He's also had a very distinguished career at the International Finance Corporation and the World Bank, and he holds his PhD in finance from George Washington University. Our second speaker will be Dr. Ung-tae Chung. He's an associate research fellow at the Korea Energy Economics Institute. He specializes in energy expansion and security policy. He most recently published and co-authored a study called Study on the Development of an Energy Security Index and an Assessment of Energy Security for East Asian Countries. He's a frequent contributor and speaker on issues related to energy and South Korea green growth. And he did his graduate work at the University of Colorado at Boulder. So I'm going to invite Dr. Alves to come speak first, and then afterwards, Dr. Chung.
Here's the clicker. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. I want to be relatively brief, give you an idea of Latin America and the energy sector in particular, and where we see opportunities for both Korea and also the rest of the world in really changing the way we look at energy and the way the society has been moving. A little bit of a background of the IDB itself. Since 1961, we do $170 billion of lending. We're about $12 to $14 billion of sustainable lending every year. And this is for every sector. So it starts from the education, social sectors, all the way to heavy infrastructure. And we tend to be a very focused on as an infrastructure bank per se. One important aspect is last year we had a capital replenishment of $150 billion, and this capital replenishment had a certain level of targets. And one of the targets is climate change. We were a strong proponent in climate change, and 25% of all of our lending is going towards mitigation of climate change activities. And that includes not only on the energy side, which we are transforming the fossil fuel based energy to renewable energy, but also in agriculture, for instance. In Latin America, more than 40% of all climate change activities is due to land use changes, where they cut down the forest and they plant either sugarcane or some other product or grasslands. So that's one of our key focuses is on the agricultural side. The second side is transport. Over 30% is accounted for transport. Typically, we're working with logistics and urban settings and how to minimize urban transportation and the reduction of fossil fuels in those areas. And last but not least, energy, which we're really revamping an energy sector. And many other countries have a significant importance on the energy sector, either from the export side or the import side. So I think we need to press escape for me to go to the next round. But I'll talk a little bit about energy. And I think here we go. We're close. In terms of the IDB on the energy side, okay, here we go. We did about $28 billion since 1961. We do about $2 billion a year, $1 billion in public sector side and $1 billion in the private sector side. And a little bit different than our colleagues at the World Bank and IFC, we have public and private all under one umbrella. So when in fact, the same teams work on public sector loans and private sector transactions. We just recently, this year, approved a project in Costa Rica. Reventación was a hydro project where the public sector came in with 120 million, the private sector came in with 150 million, and then we syndicated another 300 million for commercial banks. So we work hand in hand with the government, and more importantly is we change the regulations necessary for the private sector to take hold. In Latin America, we estimate that Latin America itself needs $55 billion a year of resources for the energy sector as a whole. A lot of it is going to oil and gas exploration, but a lot of it is going to renewables. And the IDB, the World Bank, and most of the other multilaterals will only be a fraction of that. The governments themselves cannot absorb and make those projects viable soon enough. So there needs to be a strong, strong participation of the private sector. We think that probably over 2/3 of all investments in Latin America and the Caribbean region in the energy sector will be private sector investments. And what we're trying to do is foster that atmosphere for private sector investments to come in. And certainly Korea is in a very unique position to contribute to that development. In terms of where the markets are and where do we see the change in the markets? Just last Friday, there's been really almost a revolution in terms of the changes in cost between renewables and fossil fuels. Most of Latin America has a strong participation on the fossil fuel side for exports. We have 6 exporting countries, the largest Venezuela and Brazil, that export petroleum, but we also have Peru, we have Ecuador, Trinidad and Tobago, even Mexico are all producers, petroleum producing countries. And then most of the other countries are actually consuming. So they have most of the Caribbean islands and in Central America consume the fossil fuels. So in both areas, if you look at strategic analysis of each country, energy is always in the mix, either as an export and boosting up their GDP or as an import and actually affecting their competitiveness in the world, since energy is such a strong input to commerce, industry, tourism, and so forth. But we have seen a drastic shift. Just this past Friday, they had the energy auction in Brazil, over 500 megawatts that were auctioned off for renewables, which was T+3, which is when three years these things have to be built. The price was 4.2 cents per kilowatt hour, the lowest price ever in the world for wind energy. So if you look at, and those prices are without subsidies, just straight out. And obviously there's a couple particularities in the case of Brazil. First is you have BNDES financing, which typically is TJLP, which is a local financing of local currency in Brazil, 40 years at 4% in local financing. So that helps a lot. But you need to have actually factories in Brazil in order to obtain that type of financing. Because of this requirement of financing, what has been happening? 9 different wind turbine manufacturers have now either completed or are constructing factories in Brazil, just because of the financing. And because renewable energy, over 85% of the cost of renewable energy is actually the equipment, and very little is the infrastructure or the civil works. Most of this equipment is based on financing mechanisms. So financing mechanisms really can change the world. And we look at green growth, and not only green growth as a concept, but Korea leading the Secretariat for the new green growth strategy will be vitally important, because this is what makes the world actually change. The financing that will be brought through the green growth concepts to renewable energy efficiency, more efficient use of not only on the energy side, but also on the industry side, will actually transform the countries that we live in today. Last but not least, I want to talk a little bit about how the transformation is occurring. Number one thing we need for the transformation to occur is regulation. If you look back at Mexico, was almost entirely fossil fuel. You had some hydros, and then for one swoop of the writing of the pen, 3 years ago, they changed the law that said that if you're a state or you're consuming over 30 megawatts of electricity, you can buy electricity yourself. With that stroke of the pen and that change in legislation, now Mexico has over 1 gigawatt of wind power energy. And they're now building solar and wind. And the way they price these out is 10% below the market of Mexico, which is typically CFE. So you're able to do private sector projects to other private sector consumers at 10% below what the market is. And those are all profitable because in the last 3 years, we've increased 1 gigawatt. In Brazil, there are two different types of auctions. Regulations come to play. There's a T+3 and a T+5, which means that you have to have your energy available in 3 years or in 5 years. 5 years typically are hydros. 3 years are either thermals or non-conventional renewables. The T+3 last year was the first year that renewables, wind, undercut thermoelectric. And this year was all wind. It was all wind. 500 megawatts of wind at 4.2 cents. So we see the transformation. And there's no going back, because these are not feed-in tariffs. These are not subsidies. These are straight competitive pricing on auctions. And the IDB in particular, we're financing 3 wind projects in Mexico, the largest now in Latin America, 396 megawatts. We are also financing, at that time was the largest, 250 megawatts, and the 62 megawatts, all in Mexico. We're financing 2 wind projects in Uruguay, both 65 megawatts, and 2 30-megawatt wind projects in Dominican Republic. And we think that all the rest of the Latin America and the Caribbean region, the 26 countries, we think wind will play a significant role, not a marginal role, a significant role pricing versus the status quo. Most of Central America and the Caribbean, we're talking 10 to 20 cents of cost of electricity. And in Brazil, you're producing at 4. Certainly in the other countries, you could be producing under, in Mexico, we're producing under 10 cents. And it's just going to be a revolutionary change on the wind industry just because of cost. Solar power is coming in extremely strong. Through actually grant funds, we're able to accompany $62 million of grant financing, typically from the Europeans and more specifically the UK government. And that these funds will be utilized in a bidding in Chile for a solar power, concentrated solar power project in northern part of Chile for the mining sector. We anticipate, because of the $62 million of grant funding that's coming in, this project will go from the original 25 megawatts to about 100 or 150 megawatts of solar power, and that will be the largest solar power in Latin America. Last but not least, I just want to go over some of the things that the IDB is doing with the Korean government. We have IDEAS, very strongly sponsored by the Korean government. It's an extremely innovative idea. What it happens, it incorporates thoughts and ideas that people come about energy efficiency. So each wonderful idea receives a grant of $200,000, which is seed money to get that idea going. This is our 3rd year running, very strong support by the Korean government. They were one of the initial founders of this concept, and this really brings innovative ideas from NGOs, public sector, private sector, individuals or companies to fruition. And then we try to finance that, and then we have business plans to continue this process to go forward. One example of this is, for instance, in Panama, where they utilized the concept of energy efficiency in existing hospitals. So they got sensors, electronic sensors through Wi-Fi that you can actually shut and open and close ventilation systems of an existing old facility. And that actually reduced the electricity consumption of that hospital by 20% because they could actually shut full wings of an existing building. So these are some of the technologies that have been coming in. The smart grid technology, Korea is actually leading a lot of efforts. When we talk about the benefits of solar, wind, and now wave in Chile, which we're looking at, one of the key factors to make this work is transmission lines and smart grids. And Korea is really leading the efforts on smart grid technology. We think the smart grid technology in the industry has a strong growth potential given all the renewables coming in to the region, particularly in Latin America. Natural gas. We're fortunate to have a very strong colleague from KOGAS with us at the IDB, and we're revamping all the Caribbean sector that going from diesel plants to natural gas plants. And also we're looking at how to introduce natural gas into Central America. Particularly you have shale gas coming in. We see shale gas in the U.S. at $3 to $6 a million BTU. And that type of pricing will really undercut any diesel plant you have in store. Last but not least, I want to highlight, we just approved yesterday a $200 million project for, it's $200 million for IDB loan to Uruguay for a combined cycle gas plant. And the winner of that project was Hyundai Heavy Industries. So they're going to be one of our borrowers now at the largest project that Uruguay has. And next year we're looking at a regasification facility in Uruguay, and certainly the Korean companies are bidding on that as well. In terms of the last 2 points, the National Sustainable Electrification Renewable Program, it's a program we have in Nicaragua, which we at IDB is one of 8 different lenders. We led the efforts. We came in with $30 million, and we have all the other lenders coming in with $130 million for this first and second round, including Kexum. And we actually want to go to $400 million for Nicaragua and replicate that throughout the region. And last but not least, the Korean government has been instrumental in bringing training capacity for Latin American governments, public sector employees to Korea. This year we had a seminar on Jeju Island for renewable energy, and just recently, a month and a half ago, we had a gas training seminar by KOGAS. So what we want to do is bring in, how can we bring in Latin America to Korea, and then subsequently Korea to Latin America. How do we do business with IDB? We have Sung Yoon Lee, which is at the last corner, is our KOGAS secondee, and she's the one that handles all of our Korea items. But we actually are really pushing the agenda more and more, and we think that Korea has a strong value, not only because of their competence and their existing industries, but their competence on developing new industries. And I think that's the key, and that's what we're looking for in Korea. Thank you so much.
Material is not yet to screen. Actually, I just introduced myself first. Okay, hello. This is Ung Tae-jung from Korea Energy Economic Institute, which is specializing on research on energy policies. So it's an honor for me to present here on Korea's green energy policies and industry. On these presentations, I'd like to show you how the energy efficiency and renewable sectors have evolved since the energy policy paradigm was shifted to low-carbon green growth in 2008. I'm sorry, the screen is not yet to come out, so I might be wait for a while. Thank you. Okay. For the presentations, at first I'd like to show you briefly on the overall status on the energy sectors and policy frame of Korea. Then I will move to energy efficiency policy for the final energy consumption sectors, followed by policy for renewable energy deployment, And finally, I'd like to wrap up my presentation with the challenging issues on energy efficiency and the renewable policy that we face now. Okay, this is briefly. This is a picture of Korea. Since 1970, or maybe before, the Korea economic development, as well as the energy consumption, have been increasing remarkably. The picture on the left-hand side shows that energy consumption has increasing by an annually average 6.6%, as the economic growth by an annually average of 7.3% over the last 40 years. On the right-hand side, the picture indicates the energy consumption increasing by 14 times during 40 years. As you saw the pie chart on the Korea primary energy consumption patterns, oil is still take the largest share, but its demanding has been decreasing. Meanwhile, renewable share is only at 2.5% in last year, 2011. For the final consumption pattern, industry sector have used more than half of current energy use. So this diagram shows how the energy policy have evolved over time. So in 1970, so stable energy supply was a top priority to sustain economic development. After the second oil shock, the government focused on the shift away from oil-oriented system and took fuel-changing policy in the 1980s. And there was liberalization and openness to oil, power, and the gas industry to enhance market competition and efficiency in 1990s. From 2000 to now, so low-carbon green growth have been a new energy policy paradigm for sustainable energy development with three long-term directions right inside toward 2030, such as energy efficiency, energy security, and environmental protections. As now, the principal energy policy is to balance of three E's: energy security, energy efficiency, and the environmental protections, using 4 strategies. And this, my principle is going to focus on the red side, the energy efficiency improvement, and the increasing supply of renewable energies from now on. Okay. So Korea has set up long-term energy efficiency targets, such as a reduction on CO2 emissions by 30% below the business as usual by 2020, as seen in this figure. To reach the targets, we established various policies and measures for final energy consumption sectors. So energy efficiency, to improve the energy efficiency, we established, naming the basic plan for national energy utilizations. And now the fourth plan, which is established to national energy consumption targets by 11.3%, and the sectoral saving goals by this year is now in the progress. Okay. This table shows some various energy efficiency measures and the regulation for industrial, transportation, building, and appliance. So this is for industry sectors. So greenhouse gas and energy target management systems is that government impose the reduction target for greenhouse gas reduction emissions as well as the energy use to any entities whose emission volume is exceed over 125,000 tons on the energy and also energy consumption exceed over 500 terajoules respectively. In 2011, government designed 471 entities, including 375 industry sectors. The energy auditing, is actually was voluntary programs until 2007, but after 2007, it is mandatory in response for UNCCC and Kyoto protocols. And some policies And we're having a lot of business using a large amount of energy consumptions, which is usually energy use of 2,000 TOE or more are required to conduct energy auditing on every 5 years. So for transportations, the government is imposed to fuel energy efficient standard for new cars, which is which is becoming larger and stronger over time. And we're also having a lobbying program for automobiles, as you see in this table. Okay, now turn to the renewable energies. The renewable energies in Korea has increasing with annually 60% over 20 years. The share of renewable energies is usually mostly from waste, and the hydro account for 80% of TPS now. For the power mix, it's not that way. Okay, the power mix is the hydro, and the winds is mostly from actually 60% of power mix is for renewable energies. For the policy for renewable energy deployment, we have some program such as 1 million green home programs. And also we're having some green building certification. And we are having some obligation program for public buildings. And lately, one of key policy change for renewable sectors is introduction to IFS from a feed-in tariff. The IFS programs, all power producers over 500 megawatts has to produce power from renewable energies based on the target of IPS. And on the IPS system, we're having also to providing the separate portfolio ratio for solar PVs. And we're having us providing different renewable energy certification for different renewable sources. So also, Korea have providing some ODA to the government, actually green energy projects in developed countries. Actually, this part, green ODA is mostly presented from a deputy director from a SIR, Foreign Minister Trade, and Foreign Minister Affairs and Trade is more detailed. But let's introduce just for detail in energy project only. Okay, the share of renewable energy on green ODA has been increasing. Share is 2008 is only 20% of green ODA is a renewable energy project, but becoming actually 24% in 2010. So below tables, we're having some supported to some green energy projects, usually for using renewable energies. Okay. So this is one case for we have provided to using ODA to Sri Lanka for solar solar PV power generation. So for the project, from the project, we maybe have to Sri Lanka to providing to some foundation to creating the market system and the price mechanism on renewable energies. So this is our vision for renewable energy deployment of renewable energies. So this is actually the long-term vision by 2030. So we're having to improve the renewable energies to 11% of total primary energy consumption by 2030 through the development of each renewable energy sectors, such as these figures. And this is a mid-term target, which is usually to 15% of market share of total renewable energy in 2050. Okay, and through the larger funding support to 40 million trillion won during the this 2050. Okay, so last I just briefly review of some challenging issues to developing renewable energy and energy efficiency and consumptions. So for renewable energy sectors, we have not enough to system to monitor and reviewing one ongoing renewable project, and we have not yet to highly dependent on key product and technology from our side. That's why we have not yet to competitiveness on the renewable energy industry. And the most problems is a large investment from government is focused on specific areas like wind and the power for the PVs. So as I mentioned, the investment share of wind and PV on total prime industry of renewable energy is 96%. And the energy efficiency and the consumption patterns, we have not much of enough motivation to energy efficiency activities because we're having low energy cost, and particularly to electric tariff. And we have not much of evaluating system to evaluate energy efficiency policy measures. And the last thing is we have not much of policy to specialize to residents and the commercial sectors. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
I'd like to introduce our final two speakers for this afternoon's program. We'll start with Dr. Dejan Ostojic. He's a sector leader at the World Bank. He has diverse experience in Europe and Central Asia, as well as East Asia, Middle East, Latin America, and the U.S. So he has a very diverse background related to development issues. His experience includes 14 years in the energy and infrastructure development work at the World Bank, as well as 6 years as the area manager with a leading U.S. energy and water resource consulting company. And finally, he spent 8 years teaching at academia in Europe and the United States. Then our second speaker will be Deputy Director General Sang-pyo Seo of the Economic Organization and Environment Division at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade. Deputy Director General Seo, in November of 2009, he signed the Statement of Agreement approving this Strategic Action Program with China, which was a program to protect the Yellow Sea ecosystem from overfishing, habitat loss, and protecting the ecosystem there. He was also a writer of the Republic of Korea's fourth National Report to the Convention on Biological Diversity. And he was also a participant at the Global Forum on Trade, Innovation, and Growth in 2007. And in 2010, the United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific Sub-Regional Office for East and Northeast Asia. So with that, I will first turn over the floor to Dr. Ostojic and then Deputy Director General Seo.
Good afternoon. Thank you for your introduction. I had a little bit of a challenge to come up with a presentation for this forum because, as you know, the green growth and issues of sustainable development cut across many areas. And in the World Bank, we are actually trying to mainstream this thinking and the sustainable development concepts and the green growth concepts in many areas. So this afternoon I will focus on something that I work directly, which is the East Asia region and energy program in the World Bank. And as you know, in the jargon of the World Bank, East Asia actually covers countries from China to Vietnam, Southeast Asia, Indonesia, and Pacific Islands, including Myanmar more recently, the newest addition to the region. So the presentation is organized around, broadly speaking, 3 areas. A little bit to inform you about the strategy and priorities of the World Bank in East Asia region. To talk a bit more about the global trends and what the World Bank is doing, and maybe to give you some feeling of what country-specific activities are in this region. So in terms of the strategy, I think that of all regions of the World Bank, and we have 6 regions, including Africa, Latin America, Middle East, Europe, Central Asia, and so South Asia as well. East Asia is probably the most advanced in terms of focusing our energy assistance on green growth and issues around energy efficiency, improving energy efficiency, scaling up renewable energy, introducing new technologies, a very important area, particularly when we talk about collaboration with Korea. Increasing energy access, which is also a very important agenda for the World Bank, and advancing sector reforms, because it was already mentioned, many of these areas that we talk when we want to promote green growth and energy efficiency are intimately related to the reforms of energy policies. Just to give you a little bit of a structure of this presentation, I use what is now one of the best-known programs in the world, so-called Sustainable Energy for All, championed by the UN Secretary General. And I should also mention that the President of the World Bank and Secretary General co-chaired the working group on Sustainable Energy for All. So, as you know, this actually focuses on 3 main areas. One area is universal access, and I should say it's not just electrification, it's access to modern energy in general, looking from household level all the way to electrification issues. Then doubling the rate of improvements in energy efficiency as the second pillar. And the third pillar is doubling the rate of renewable energy. Because we should always remember when we talk about renewable energy that one of the major challenges is actually to increase the share of renewable energy production. It's not just a question of capacity, it's actually the so-called plant factor and how much energy do we get from renewable energy. So if just go back for a second to this one previous. So I would like to just highlight in those 3 blocks some selected topics. So of course each block can be presentation in itself, but I will try to start first with the block on doubling the share of renewable energy. What does it really mean in context of East Asia? Then we'll talk a little bit about access. I will not spend too much time on this. And we'll focus at the end on the issues of energy efficiency, which I think are very relevant for our cooperation for South Korea. Now, what does it mean to increase the share of renewables? It actually calls for a radical shift in the energy mix in East Asia. If we continue with the policies that we have currently in place, if we assume a business as usual, then this is so-called BAU scenario, business as usual scenario. By 2030, in the next 20 years, we will basically have the same structure of energy production in the region. And that diagram that you see here represents 6 major economies in the region, including China. And you can see that by 2030, the total installed capacity in the generation systems reaches a tremendous number of 2,336 gigawatts of energy. Just for comparison purposes, currently it's about 1,000. So we're talking more than doubling of total installed capacity. And of course, coal, that is the biggest chunk of this. This is, of course, also very much related to China, but these days increasingly for all economies in East Asia, is going to be dominant. In that scenario, in the business as usual scenario, basically whatever we do with renewables would not help us stabilize emissions. They will just continue increasing at the current rate, maybe even faster. So what do we need really is a radical shift towards so-called sustainable development scenario, where we have seen here basically more than doubling of renewables and significant reduction of the share of gas. Share of coal. That means increasing share of natural gas and increasing to some degree also nuclear and hydropower. Now we are witnessing tremendous developments, particularly in the gas sector. You have seen what happened in the U.S. in terms of the development of shale gas. We expected that this will have major implications for East Asia. We are now launching studies to look into that. But it's a combination of gas and renewable energy in combination of these two that only can result in this significant reduction of coal in the energy mix. Now, what does it mean in terms of investments? If you look at this diagram here, it shows basically as a percentage of GDP, the capex, the capital expenditures related to the generation sector in the 6 largest economies in East Asia. And the green line here is China, and the red line is the other 5 major economies, Vietnam, Indonesia, Thailand, and so on. If you look at the situation right now, and you can see that you basically, again, have those 2 scenarios, SD scenario, which is a sustainable development scenario, and business as usual. In the case of Chinese business as usual, you see the reduction of investments as the GDP grows from a little bit below 2% of GDP towards significantly lower number of about 0.5%. That corresponds to this remaining focus on coal. If China is going to shift its focus towards renewable and gas, then we are talking about significantly higher level of investments, which are basically at this level of about 1.5, 1.3% of the GDP over the next 20 years. Similar situation, a little bit lower for the rest of the Southeast Asia. If you do the math and look at all the numbers, you will basically see that a sustainable development scenario would cost about 4 trillions over the next 20 years, which is about 80 billion per year. And that corresponds to about 0.8% of the GDP in terms of the incremental cost. So we are talking about incremental cost about the baseline scenario or business as usual scenario. That's basically the increment that need to be financed. That's the increment that would need to be mobilized through the green financing mechanisms, through the Green Growth Fund and other mechanisms in order to shift the energy mix toward the sustainable path. If we don't have a green financing, if we don't have financial mechanisms to overcome this gap of 80 billion per year, it's very unlikely that the countries in East Asia will be able to move efficiently toward the green growth scenario. Now, let us move to something which is a completely of a different magnitude, but for the World Bank, and I think for our development partners also very important, it's a question of essentially energy access. And when we studied the question of energy access, we actually usually think about electrification in the World Bank. And in our region, in East Asia, we have about 2 billion people, as you know. Only about 170 million only is without access to electricity. But what people don't realize is that every second household in East Asia, including China, is still using traditional fuels for cooking. So we have a tremendous amount of firewood and charcoal and low quality fuels which are used for cooking in this region, which results, according to World Health Organization, to about 650,000 premature deaths every year in East Asia. So those are the numbers that people don't always see when they talk about ROI. This is actually what the bank is now trying to bring on the forefront of fighting the energy poverty and moving towards universal access to modern energy. Here you can see the investment needs. Unfortunately, I think numbers are a little bit too small if you look from behind. So I can tell you that you can see here that there is this is shown for the next decade and the decade between 2021 and 30 in the business as usual and universal access. And you see the big green here and here basically corresponds to investments in rural energy, because that's another area where we need really to focus. And many of these people, of course, as you know, who don't have access are in remote locations. We have a lot of remote locations throughout East Asia, either because of terrain or because of islands and so on. And this is really where most of the need exists. The good news here is that when you compare these needs here on universal access with the needs of changing the energy mix on the generation side, the one that I talked before, this is completely manageable. This is more than affordable. We are talking way below 1% of GDP in those countries. So, leaving these people without access to modern energy would be just not acceptable in the next 20 years. And that's an agenda we need to also keep in mind when we talk about sustainable development. Let me now turn to the final part of this presentation, which essentially focuses to what I think is the most interesting challenge we are facing in East Asia: urbanization. What really drives the economic development, what really drives energy demand in our region, is this tremendous, fast, and increasing rate of urbanization. And you can see here North America and Europe where they are, and you see how China and Southeast Asia are quickly catching up in terms of urbanization. If you look at China alone, in the next 20 years, according to demographic and other projections, 300 million people would move from rural areas to urban areas. That means essentially the whole country of the United States being built in 20 years in terms of infrastructure in urban areas. And that gives you also the sense of what are the energy needs and so on. So when we look at this chart here, which shows the demand of energy, you will see that compared to the per capita energy consumption in the US, Japan, and Australia, I'm sorry I don't have here Korea, but compared to these levels, the countries we are talking, developing countries in this region, are way below. So there is no question that their demand will grow, and that significantly grow as the urbanization proceeds. Now, what does it mean is that 70% of energy demand and 70% of emissions, greenhouse gas emissions, will happen in cities. This is where the main battlefront is in terms of green growth, the cities. Now, in terms of addressing this issue, that we can schematically represent as a basically so-called bending the curve approach, where we know that emissions are going to increase. As I said, demand for energy is going up, emissions will go up. There is no question about that, particularly for developing countries. The question is how fast. And this is where we have this bending of the curve. And we need to look at all these elements. We need to look at transportation, we need to look at industry, commercial buildings, residential buildings. Basically, everything in the city needs to be looked from that perspective. So as a response to that, the World Bank developed the so-called Sustainable Urban Energy and Emissions Program, which is essentially schematically shown here. And the very important first step in this program is actually commitment by mayors, commitment by cities to this agenda. Because we often listen how the countries, at the highest political levels, at the highest intellectual levels, commit to certain goals and so on. But for us to make these things practical, to make this thing really work, we need to go the next level. We need the commitment from mayors. We need the people who are actually responsible for emissions in those large and fast-growing cities to commit politically, to commit economically, to commit to the sustainable economic growth. And then, of course, once we have this commitment, there is a number of technical steps that needs to be done in order to develop the plans, to develop the bankable projects, to raise the financing, and to do, very importantly, monitoring, reporting, and evaluation of results. Because as we know, in many cases, what is not monitored, we cannot really price, we cannot probably finance. This gives you just one example. This is the city of Surabaya, Indonesia, second largest city in Indonesia. How the situation looks like if you look at total energy flows. Because this is basically the metabolism, if you want, of a city, which takes oil, coal, natural gas, gasoline, everything, and transform it in commercial activities, residential, public, industrial, transportation, and so on. So you see, in every step here, there is energy efficiency that can be extracted. There is gains that can be achieved. Of course, that would require also significant adjustments in terms of the capacities of the cities, in terms of the policies they have, and of course, raising the financing from both public and private sources. This is another just a comparison for 3 cities in East Asia. Cebu is the Philippines, Da Nang is Vietnam, and Surabaya is Indonesia. How the picture looks with greenhouse emissions by fuel sources and by end users. We have just published a report which has all those details and looks at all these elements in transport, buildings, waste, water, solid waste. Basically, all the elements, as I mentioned, of a city are there. And of course, when you do all this analysis, you come up with a number of opportunities number of areas where you can actually improve energy efficiency. We can identify, very attractive projects with a very quick payback periods, particularly on the energy efficiency side. How fast money can go back basically depends on the policies, depends on the price of energy, depends on the conditions of financing. In some cases, it's more challenging, because if you look at, for example, Indonesia, you know that Indonesia has a highly subsidized energy. Of course, investments in energy efficiency will be much more difficult to do there. On the other hand, if you have a Philippines, one of the highest prices of electricity, investments in energy efficiency are basically no-brainer there. So let me just give you some of takeaway messages from this recent analysis on urban energy. That East Asian cities are likely to be the global engines of green growth. There is no more important area for green growth globally than cities in East Asia. This is where the battle for emissions and the green growth globally will be won or lost. That's the scale of the problem we have at hand. Reforming institutions is critical. Cities and the national governments need to work together, but institutions need to be reformed, capacity needs to build, energy governance has to be introduced. We have a very good collaboration going on with the Korean energy efficiency, KEMCO, energy efficiency company, under the Ministry of Economy and Knowledge, which is trying to bring some of experiences from Korea, for example, to Vietnam, in order to start building this capacity. But this is a huge effort to basically help the cities develop the capacity to deal with these problems and to put their development on a sustainable path. Obviously, there are many investments, but only investments which are properly analyzed, identified, which are properly well understood, they will attract financing. That's why we also need a planning capacity in the cities in order to develop these proposals, to develop these projects. To get the bankable projects on the table seems easy when we sit here in Washington. There are many people who are skilled in financial techniques, in presenting projects, economic analysis. So if you go to a city in East Asia, if you go to Da Nang or you go to Surabaya, very few people will be able to put a bankable project on the table. That's a huge challenge that we have. And then, of course, mobilizing investments, putting together public-private partnerships, because you would need, obviously, private sector to strongly participate in those efforts. But public sector still has a major role to play as well. And I should say, of course, at the end, that the World Bank stands ready to help in these activities. This gives you a little bit of a map, about our program. What's what you are doing in China, Mongolia, Indonesia, Vietnam, Philippines. This is a group of Southeast Asian countries, Thailand, Laos, Myanmar, the latest addition to the East Asia region, and Cambodia. And of course, smallest and the most challenging places are Pacific Islands, I should say. This is very special case. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. This is Sang Pyo-seo. As Abraham Kim explained about me, that I'm the Deputy Director General for Energy and Climate Change and Environment. Recently, I was involved in that green things. It means that before my current position, I was seconded to presidential office as Assistant Secretary to the President for Green Growth. And then I was working at the Global Green Growth Institute as a Chief Administrative Office for 1 year. I was helping the GGI to raise the internal capacity to be a real international organization. Finally, as you may know, that GGI has turned into the international organization in last October. Anyway, that I'm very grateful for being invited to this very precious seminar. I was very impressed by the previous three speakers. Really, the green things and renewable things are very promising sector for the business and also the government. I'll explain today that four issues that let me explain what is the green growth. May you know that, but I explain briefly, and with that the Korean green growth policies and the idea of green ODA, and you may heard about the green triangle. My president, when he has that opportunity, he speak up that the green triangle in Korea, and lastly, the idea of alliance, green growth between Korea and Denmark. That alliance is not a physical alliance. That's that value alliance that was made between the Korea and Denmark. Green growth is to achieve the economic growth while reducing carbon and protecting environment. In the previous past scenario, and thought that economy and environment cannot go along with together. But green growth idea is means that two things. I mean that the economy and environment can produce a winning impact. See the two pictures on the screen. The first screen looks like brown things. That as you know that Korea has developed itself very quickly by the brown growth. We call the brown growth. That's that energy intensive and carbon dependent development path. But right now that as we know that green growth should be the first our object to protect our environment, and also the if we pursue that sustainable development for the longer term, we think that other than the green growth, we don't have any option to push forward our development. As you know that the green growth term is not created by the Korean government. If you look up to that, many academic publication, and there are some words on like green growth. But in 2008, right after the President Lee Myung-bak took his position as a Korean president, it was, I guess, that 2008 August, he announced that national strategy for green growth for the future our Korea's development vision. So to make that policy infrastructure, the Korean government legislated that National Strategy for Green Growth Act and also 5 years plan. And in 2009, we set up the greenhouse gas reduction target. And finally, this year, Korean National Assembly passed the Emission Trading Scheme Act. Already, Dr. Jung explained that about that our greenhouse gas emission target, midterm greenhouse gas mitigation target. It will be the voluntary reduction by 30% below business as usual by 2020. One of that effort to reduce that emission, greenhouse gas emissions, the Korean government planned to increase the renewable energy supply from 2.5% in 2009 to 11% in 2013. Still, I guess that what is that? Still, the percentage 2030, 11 is not quite big, but it's 4 times bigger than the 2009. The Korean green growth policy infrastructure like this. 2010, Korean National Assembly passed the Framework Act on Low Carbon Green Growth that envisaged to establish the foundation for green growth implementation and to make use of the green technology and green industry for new growth engine. And 2011, we passed the Smart Grid Act, and 2011 also Green Buildings Act, and as I was told, that the Emission Trading Scheme Act this year. TMS, we call the TMS, Target Management Scheme. Already Dr. Jung explained a little. I guess the figure is a little different when I see that, listen to that Dr. Jung, but the main idea is just the same. And another our system, the emission trading scheme, it'll be introduced not from this year, from the 2015. The ETS system is to reduce greenhouse gas by using that market mechanism. If all our measures go well, as I already told that in 2015 we'll start that ETS project. That will be the first Asian country to implement the nationwide cap and trade system. Even that Japan couldn't start that ETS system. As the other speakers told us that green industry, green energy things become that a new source of growth, and it creates lots of business opportunity. For the government R&D investment, as you see that these figures that it goes steadily up, and also private sector, we see that 30 largest conglomerate in Korea invest rapidly more from the period 2010, the $30 billion to 11 to 13 years period, almost $20 billion. And also, we found that the renewable energy sector is the most favored sector by the Korean conglomerate. So in this sector, especially employment increased 3.7 times, and sales 6.5 times, export 7.3 times increased from 2007 to 2010. Each year, the Korean big groups increase their investment. See that in 2008, just $2.5 billion, but 2010, it shows that $7.3 billion. Their investment goes very fastly up. And as I already told you, that the renewable energy sector is the most biggest part for the Korean conglomerate. And now, even that the Korean government start the green growth idea, right now that the green growth is not just Korean things, it become globalized. As you see that OECD and UNESCAP and G20. In OECD, in 2009, May, they announced that they declared that the green growth strategy. Since then, the OECD focused on that the lots of green growth project. Especially in this year, they are working with GGGI for the green growth strategy in the developing country. I guess that some outcome comes from at the end of this year. And UNESCAP already, I don't know where that the Mr. Abraham can find out that UNESCAP. When I was in the director of the economic organization, Korea hosted the UNESCAP commission meeting. At the time that the UNESCAP agreed on that the green growth strategy in the Asian Pacific region. Since then, the UNESCAP also very actively engaged in the green growth project. And as we know that G20, Korea, the minister in the Korean embassy here, he was also involved in that 2010 Korean G20 summit. At the time, there were some trade things, but green growth was also adopted in the leaders' declaration. Since then, this year, in June, the Mexico hosted the G20 summit. They agreed that the concrete outcome on that the dialogue platform on green growth. This means that this platform to find out that how we improve the green growth in the developing country with what method, and they found that need to cooperate with the public and private sector also. So this platform will be open to that the public and private and any other academics. So right now they are in the constructing that platform right now, but in the major international fora, they are working on that green growth. Green ODA. Green ODA is that official development assistant designed to promote green growth in developing country. So, I guess that UN and OECD is figuring out what indicator for the green ODA. They have some their standard. We're using that OECD and the UN indicators and other indicators. With that, we found that not just Korea, the other European country, they are put the more money. They are increasing that green ODA recently. Especially Korea's green ODA has increased from the 55 million to 127 million in 2010. That's the average is 35% increase for years. Let me go. The green ODA, a major program in the Korean government is East Asia Climate Partnership. That is led by the Korean International Cooperation Agency. We say that KOICA. The main project for the EACP is the water management land market project. The KOICA provided the $70 million to 3 countries, Mongolia, Azerbaijan, and the Philippines. And the other project already Dr. Jung explained. And the green triangle means there is a unique position in Korea. In Korea, we have the Global Green Growth Institute, and also recently the UNFCCC endorsed that Secretary of Green Climate Fund in Korea, and in Korean government created the National Green Technology Center. Three organizations can go along with strategy, finance, technology, and also make synergy. So my picture is not on this one. Just above that, the head of state level was in there. So yeah. Anyway, that in last October, Global Green Growth Institute turned into that international organization. Its vision is that dedicated to promoting and disseminating green growth worldwide. Three major activities: green growth planning, research, and PPP. As the Dr. Let me all the speakers, that the green growth plan in the GGI also the main standard to decide that which country we start the project is that the political commitment strong. If not, our project cannot be successful one. So main standard, main criteria to select that country for the green growth is the strong political commitment. And right now that we have a major 5 countries, every country showed from the high level, they gave the GGI strong commitment for project. GCF, as I already told, that the idea was decided at the COP16. It was 2010 in Cancun, and this year, a couple of weeks ago in Doha, there was COP18. The Korea was the host seat of the GCF Secretariat. Right now, that the interim secretary was established in with the core effort UNFCCC and JEP, and around 20 staff were working in Bonn. And we hope that the interim secretary expect to move in Songdo. I guess that the latter half of the next year. GCF is promoting the paradigm shift toward the low emission and climate resilient. And the main thing is the reducing the greenhouse gas emission and adapt to the impact of climate change. Main idea is that channeling, not this one. Main idea is a little easy access to the developing country. There are many critics from the UN countries, World Bank project and IMF project. There are a lot of conditions, so very difficult access to the fund. That's why that I guess that UN create another facility funding for the developing countries. Green Technology Center is established in Korea. It was designed to support the Korean national green technology, green policies. So, but right now, start networking for the global scene. And let me start by the Global Green Growth Alliance, Korea and Denmark. A very interesting alliance. I thought that this alliance doesn't have any concrete figures and concrete outcome, but when we have the competition with 6 countries to host the GCF to Seoul, 6 countries means that Germany and Swiss and Mexico and other 2 countries. The 2 countries was very strong candidate, Korea and Germany. With this alliance, Denmark couldn't decide that which country they are supposed to support that candidacy, so they give up to their voting. So new alliance, Green Growth Alliance, can make real something. Thank you.
If you'd like to ask a question, please just raise your hands, and we will have a roaming microphone with some of our interns who will bring to you. Let's start off right here.
Thanks. Sorry. Thank you. My name is Lisa Friedman. I write for Climate Wire. We're an energy policy magazine here. And thank you for doing this. This was really interesting. I have a Green Climate Fund question. There's been, I've been covering this for a long time. There's always a lot of discussion about mobilizing private sector finance for the Green Climate Fund, but I've heard so few specifics. And I'm hoping one or some of you can talk specifics. What are some of the best ways out there to mobilize private finance? What agencies? Please correct me if I'm wrong, but your agencies, the countries take the lead, right? And so what is out there as a model to generate private finance for clean energy or projects like this? And what is the Korean government, as hosts of the GCF, thinking of? What are some of the best ideas out there? If I could ask a related question, I'm curious. Oh, sorry. Should I stop?
Yes, that's a mic. You can just. No, you can just put it in front of you. Oh, you can just leave it in front of you. Just.
No question.
That question, 2 weeks ago, that there were general meeting, General Assembly for the UNFCCC in Doha. That was the main question. But as you know, that in UN system to mobilize that money is not easy. Even that they cannot think of the modality for that how they mobilize that money, even that in private and public, even that the multilateral, bilateral, even that any other alternate sources. So they are just started that how we mobilize that money for the GCF, but they decided most of the money, not most of the money, the significant amount of the money flows through that GCF. They decide. Technically, in GCF they have a board. Board includes that 24 countries. So technically, a board will decide that the modality for how they mobilize the fund. But as I told you, that other UN member country very worried about that. They should also involved in that process. So the decision made in the Doha meeting. Just we're going to scale up that long-term financing for climate up to the $100 billion per year by 2010. But you know that each year we cannot mobilize that 100 billion US dollars. So at minimum, they decide from the period of 2013 to 2015, 4 years, the 10 billion US dollar. That was the outcome in the recent UNFCCC meeting.
I guess maybe it's more of an academic question. I mean, what are some of the best ideas out there to mobilize private sector? I know it's supposed to be done, but how?
I'll give you some success stories and some maybe not so successful stories. We had the CTF fund, and now we have the SREP fund, all to mobilize, renewable, clean type of technologies. I think part of the issue and part of why it has not been as effective is first they selected a certain number of countries where they thought they were the most promising, and then it was a very top-down approach where the governments, and in this case typically was the Ministry of Finance, which received the funds, were the ones that designated with the help of obviously the multilateral organizations, but helped to see how this would be implemented, how these funds would be utilized. I think the top-down approach is not necessarily the best approach to get the money out the door. We've seen the countries that have utilized, at least in Latin America, that have utilized the CTF funds, in this case was Colombia and Mexico, and discussions with Chile, have done it relatively slowly. In fact, we're still looking to disperse in Colombia. In order to mobilize the private sector windows, we've done some other programs, which were not CTF per se, but were the government of Mexico's initiatives, where they said, for instance, replacement of electric motors. So you basically have we had a fund of $300 million, so an $80 million fund to replace electric motors, that after all those motors the vouchers came in, it's like the Cash for Clunkers. After they come in with these old motors, they get a voucher and they can go to a store and basically buy a new one for certain standards. They had certain energy ratings. And there we had an independent audit from that scenario. And for the $80 million that was invested in this exchange program, saved the government of Mexico $300 million a year in terms of energy. So this was an independent audit done a number of years after that. Those type of things work. The other type of things that work is what we're looking in, for instance, in Chile with the solar powered, where we're coming in with grant funding because right now the solar is not competitive to market. So you need something to make it competitive for the renewable energies to be on-grid competitive. And typically is capital. So if these funds come in and really reduce the cost of capital of the initial renewable energy, those will be on-grid competitive and the market will just take over. And now we're having a bidding for that solar project in Chile, where we think that will actually inspire the private sector. So in order for a private sector to come in, there needs to be some sweeteners, and sweeteners is grant funding or subsidized funding for the capital investments in renewable energy in order for them to compete with the current market practices.
Please.
Thank you. My name is Han Kuyo, and I'm working at the International Finance Corporation of the World Bank Group. And then previously I had worked for Korea's Ministry of Knowledge Economy as a Director for Climate Change Division. So thank you very much for all those insightful presentations. I'd like to direct my questions to our colleagues from IDB and World Bank and others if you have some the insight. Since today's topic is opportunities for green business in developing countries, after working in this area quite for some time, I find that there are two kind of promising areas for Korean companies, especially in terms of the green business in outside Korea. I think first would be energy efficiency. As you may know, in Korea, Korea import over 90% of energy from outside the country. And then from 30, 40 years ago, Korean companies were really pressured and pushed to improve energy efficiency. So I see that there are very good potential for Korean companies and Korean government to share those experience and expertise in other outside Korea. And secondly, I think the smart grid. As you mentioned from our colleague from IDB, Korean government has put a lot of effort to make this smart grid as one of the top, policy priority in this green growth arena. So I feel that these two areas have very promising business opportunities to Korean companies. So if our colleagues from IDB and World Bank could elaborate on specifically which countries in Latin America and East Asia there could be concrete business opportunities in this area of energy efficiency and smart grid. That would be really helpful. Thank you.
Maybe start. First, would like to agree with you that energy efficiency and modern technologies, I would expand this beyond just the smart grids to many modern technologies that we see coming from Korea are very attractive. I think that Korea is very well recognized, at least in East Asia region, as the leader in modern technologies and also energy efficiency solutions. As you correctly pointed out, after the oil crisis in the 70s, Korea took to the heart the energy efficiency issues and always stayed on the path of improving, making steps to achieve the best results. Now, how this is translating into business opportunities outside Korea? I think, yes, countries know very well big Korean names. You know, you have big names like industrial leaders like a Samsung, Kia Motors, you know, SK, construction business, and so on. What people outside Korea know less is Korean policies. The way how Korea basically created the market internally and created the business opportunities for these energy efficiency solutions and new technologies to grow so successfully in Korea. Because it is, you know, a remarkable story, but this story has much to do with the policies and the consistent application of these policies for many years. And certain, of course, investment environment and other things which come with a very, very good and very sound macroeconomic situation. Those are the issues that are also very important for these countries, because when they learn from Korea, they should also learn, you know, not just about technologies, but actually how to create the market, how to create incentives, how to mobilize the financing, and then technology will flow because they are very competitive. I think when we talk about the countries which are obviously very different in this region, I would broadly divide them in two groups. You have countries where the policies are distorted to a significant degree, particularly energy policies. I just mentioned in presentation the situation in Indonesia, where you have essentially electricity heavily subsidized to a tune of about $10 billion every year. So you basically have a situation where very little incentive in terms of, or very weak foundations or fundamentals exist for investments in energy efficiency. So it's not that the country doesn't recognize that energy efficiency would be good, but if you are receiving all the subsidies, you don't have that much incentive. On the other hand, if you have countries which are pricing energy closer to the full price, where cost reflective tariffs and so on, they are already in a better position to move towards energy efficiency. And there are some countries in between. I think there are some big countries, developing countries. First one which comes to my mind is Vietnam, where I think Korea has a strong interest to promote collaboration and improvement of energy efficiency, introducing new technologies. And this is incidentally also the country where we are using CTF funds for smart grids. Actually, we just recently approved a large project, $500 million, for 5 distribution companies covering all the Vietnam. And a significant component of this 500 million is a CTF fund, which is directly focused on metering systems, modern billing systems, improving essentially the distribution systems, as we call it nowadays, modernizing distribution systems, which typically go nowadays as a smart grids. I think that this is just one example. We can come with others, but I would like just to emphasize that it's not just the technologies; it's a package of the policies, financing, and technologies that have to come together.
Dr. Elvis?
So just maybe a couple of comments on the energy efficiency. Where do we see Korean companies really shine? Korea has gone and has done extremely well in the electrodomestic appliances. They tend to be the best in the world these days. And what's happening is Korean electrodomestic appliances are losing towards other nations which are producing less standard quality, both in every aspect, but they're cheaper. So one of the things that we look for energy efficiency is how to make standards in the world, and in our case in particular Latin America, where the Korean appliances actually are competitive because they're already hitting those thresholds on energy efficiency. So I think the Korean government and Korean companies should focus on this particular area very specifically. First is some kind of studies for the governments, for them to see how much expenditures they're spending on the household appliances that are currently being sold in those countries. Because it's a lot of countries, including refrigerators, for instance, are being produced in the U.S., which can't sell in the U.S. They sell them in Mexico because of energy efficiency. So I think some of the things is just alerting the governments of the consumption factor. The second is creating the standards, the thresholds. What is the ideal energy efficiency appliances for each category? And the third is having the Korean government help these governments pass legislation in order for this to be law. Therefore, initially all the Korean companies will do very well because they're already hitting those thresholds. But what it in fact does, it makes the whole sector of appliance manufacturing more efficient, which then benefits the whole world in terms of energy efficiency. So that's one aspect. The second one is on the public sector side. Typically, the government spend a tremendous amount of energy, particularly on air conditioning of public buildings. So it's hospitals, public buildings, schools, police stations, anything to do with the public sector. And those IDB has a very clear idea of how to transcend that. First, we do a study of what is the stock of the government in terms of energy-consuming appliances and lighting. The second is what is the cost of, what is the monthly payment the government does for all its electricity needs? Second is what is the cost to replace those? And third is what's the payback time? And we've seen in many of the islands in the Caribbean and Central America that we're talking about a 3-year payback for replacing full, the whole country. And we've done it, for instance, the DR, where I think that country you needed about $56 million of energy efficiency appliances and air conditioning in particular for all the public sector in order to reduce that demand for that country. And the countries that we think would do well in energy efficiency are the countries that already have this in mind. Certainly Mexico with the CANUI, which is an energy efficiency agency under the Ministry of Mines and Energy. Costa Rica has an energy efficiency facility. Brazil in 2001, 2002, through the energy rationing, they created a law, so they're relatively up to date. Peru, for instance, has banned all incandescent light bulbs. Everything you buy in Peru, it's either fluorescent or LEDs. So those are the countries that are taking the lead, and those are the countries that I would suggest Korean to work with. On the smart grid side, IDB is working hand in hand with the Korean government for projects in Colombia. Colombia has a new initiative called Colombia Inteligencia, which is looking at smart grid technology. And also the Brazilian on the state level are much more into working with smart grid technology because they get their premiums on the distribution side based on efficiency. So part of their tariff structure is based on them becoming more efficient. So you have a very strong allied is the state level distribution companies in Brazil.
Great. We only have a few minutes, so let's take the questions all together. So right there and then right there. So.
My question is that it's always interesting to actually see how private sector or government organizations actually have initiated to share their experience or invest in the region. Along with that line, my question is that the CAMCO's experience with Vietnam, actually them sharing their experience and expertise, is very interesting. I would want to know how that would happen, who sent the invitation and how that is happening, and how we can see that expand in other organizations of the private sectors and regions. Thanks.
Thank you. Rob Colorina. I'm with an investment group, AIAC. We're in 20 countries, emerging and developed. My question is with respect to on the debt side, do you anticipate that debt in these projects can be rated, or what type of credit enhancement could be available to that?
Dialogue at, I would say, the high levels with the government, but we also believe that, to start doing the work with Korean parties, we need to involve them in our projects directly. And that was the idea that we essentially reached out to to the government, but also to government institutions to understand how they're organized and where do we have this experience on policies, on financing, on implementing energy efficiency projects. Because as I said, that's the whole package of the things we would like to bring to the countries. And we had the discussions, and I think the general manager of Kempo was also visiting us here in Washington. So that's how the initial discussion started. But we were fortunate that they recognize that this is also an opportunity for them. So they have they were ready to invest their time and also to mobilize resources in order to participate in that work. Going forward, I think that it's extremely important for us to learn better about the centers of excellence in Korea, the actual institutions, the actual people who have this capacity, who can bring this experience from Korea. Because I think that Korea can offer much more than products, much more than manufactured goods. And this is really what is the developmental challenge for us when we talk about knowledge transfer, experience, and so on, how to bring those best experiences in the countries like Korea, which avoided so-called mid-income trap and actually reach the level of higher development, how to bring this particularly to middle-income countries, to low-developed countries as well, but particularly to middle-income countries, because they have to learn the most from Korea.
Anyone with that question? Yeah, please.
Actually, the questions the lady is asking is actually this is actually our green ODA is going forward because and before that we just providing ODA to some countries to providing some part and materials only. So there's not much of participating private companies. But actually, since this year, we having to government is change their mind to we have been participating in green ODA with activity. So we have been participating not much of providing a key part and materials, also providing some technology and experience from private sectors. So for example, for Mongolian cases, we have been providing a Mongolian some solar energy to providing to. Extracting from subsea waters. So it's participating to namely Daesung Energy companies. Actually, they're having a technology to providing a solar power to some special technology to providing to some specific areas like extracting some water below the waters. So this is kinds of some example to public and private sectors, PPPA programs. Actually, we are going to forward to more chance to that kind of a package type to attending the ODA programs. So this is going to be a forward to in the next few years.
Great. Gentlemen, thank you very much for your insightful comments and your presentation. Please help me thank our guests.